Keanu Reeves, one of the most admired actors in the world, known for his humility and kindness, has always valued people over fame or fortune. But what most people don't know is that beyond the red carpets and movie sets, he built deep, loyal connections with those around him, especially with Ramon, his trusted chauffeur for nearly a decade. Ramon is a humble, hard-working man who lives a life of quiet sacrifice. For years he saved every penny to pay for his wife's urgent surgery, but on what should have been a simple visit to the bank, everything changes when he tries to withdraw the money he's worked so hard for. He's humiliated by a prejudiced bank teller who questions the legitimacy of the funds, judging him not by his character but by the way he looks. What this teller doesn't know is that the man he just disrespected works directly for one of the most respected figures in Hollywood, and Keanu is about to find out what happened. Without noise, without drama, but with quiet strength, Keanu makes a decision that will surprise everyone and prove that real power doesn't lie in status or celebrity. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments where are you watching this video from. We love hearing from you and always read every message. The sun hadn't fully risen yet when Ramon stepped out of the small apartment he shared with his wife Louisa in downtown Los Angeles. The building was old but well kept, the kind of place where neighbors still said good morning in the hallway and the janitor knew everyone by name. Ramon wore a crisp white shirt around the night before, black slacks and freshly shined shoes, all simple but respectable. In his hands he held a brown envelope containing the money he had saved for years. Every dollar counted, saved penny by penny, often at the cost of skipping meals to pay for a delicate surgery his wife would undergo the following month. It was everything he had and everything he could offer out of love. At 45, with a lifetime of quiet battles, Ramon had worked as a chauffeur for over 2 decades, and for nearly 10 years he'd been the personal driver of Keanu Reeves. Yes, that Keanu, the actor, the star, but to Ramon, Keanu is more than that, a kind, respectful man, more than an employer, a quiet companion on long drives. They didn't talk much, but there was something in the silence between them, a mutual respect that didn't need words. If there was anyone Ramon would never expect prejudice or arrogance from, it was Keanu. But that morning's mission was personal. Before picking up Keanu for Teddy's appointments, Ramon stopped by the bank he needed to withdraw the money and arrange the payments for the surgery. He was nervous but hopeful. Louisa had promising medical prospects, and he trusted the doctors. The last thing he expected was what he would experience inside that bank. The bank was cold with a faint the smell of stale coffee and air conditioning. Raoni walked in and took a number. He watched the digital display with quiet focus, like someone navigating unfamiliar territory. He didn't visit banks often. He preferred to handle everything digitally, but for larger amounts, an in-person withdrawal was required. When his number was called, he approached the counter calmly. The teller was a white man around 30 years old, with neatly combed blonde hair, a dark blue tie, and a bored expression. "Good morning," Ramon said politely, holding out the envelope. "I'd like to withdraw this amount, please." The teller, Mark, according to his name badge, frowned as he looked at the envelope. He took it reluctantly and opened it, looked inside, then at Ramonathan. "Back inside again. This whole amount use is yours." Raoni nodded, feeling his face heat up. "I've worked for many years, says a chauffeur, saved up for my wife's surgery." Mark didn't respond right away. He typed slowly into the computer, as if waiting for something to appear on the screen that would validate his suspicion. Mrs. Gaze was hard, clinical, accusatory. "I need your ID, please." Ramon handed it over, already feeling uncomfortable. A small line began to form behind him. An older woman frowned, trying to understand what was happening. 2 young men stifled laughter. Mark looked over the information, then muttered under his breath, "Strange, a chauffeur with that kind of money." Raymond heard it, and it felt like the ground beneath him sank a little. "Excuse him?" he asked, trying to keep his composure. Mark raised his eyes, his expression full of disdain. "The bank has the right to question suspicious transactions. I need to confirm the source of this money. Do you have anything to prove where it came from?" It's all in cash. I've been saving it for years. I don't have receipts, but without I can't authorize the withdrawal." Ramon felt everyone's eyes on him, and someone muttered, "What a scene." Another shook their head and turned away. He tried to explain, said he worked for a well-known figure, that he was honest, but Mark wasn't listening anymore. Arms crossed in different his posture, said, "I know you're kind and you don't belong here." Humiliated, his dignity wounded, and heart heavy, Ramon took back his ID in the envelope. He didn't say another word, didn't beg, didn't argue. He just turned and walked toward the exit, slowly, as if the weight carried wasn't just the money, but the whirled on his shoulders. Outside, the sunlight was strong, but not strong enough to warm what he felt inside. Leaning against the black car he used to work, Ramon took a deep breath. His tear-filled eyes betrayed the pain. He tried to hide the silent suffering of a man living in a world where appearance still outweighs character. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. He had to move on. He had an appointment with Keanu. Work called and he had never let work wait. He got into the car, adjusted seat, checked the mirrors, tried to pull himself together, but something had changed in his expression. A heavy silence, a lump in his throat. At 9:02 a.m. Keanu Reeves walked out of the building, wore jeans, a black t-shirt and sunglasses. As he got into the car, Hegov, his usual warm "Good morning, Ramon," replied, but without his usual energy. Thin jeans started, and they drove off. During the ride, Keanu remained silent for the first few minutes. He usually respected Raymond's quiet nature, but today, something felt off. As the car cruised down busy Wilshire Boulevard, Keanu glanced subtly out the rearview mirror. He saw Raymond's face more closed off than usual. His eye still read something was wrong, and he was about to find out what it was. Oh, truth, it would change not only the day but both of their lives. The streets of Los Angeles passed by in a blur, but inside the sleek, black car time seemed to slow down. The usual comfortable silence between Keanu and Ramon had taken on a different texture today. Heavier, denser, almost suffocating. Keanu leaned slightly forward in his seat. He'd grown used to tough, quiet man behind the wheel. Ramon wasn't chatty, never had been, but today's Lance felt wounded. He took off his sunglasses and placed them in his lap, his eyes fixed subtly on the rearview mirror. Raymond's hands gripped the steering wheel just a little too tight. His jaw was clenched. His eyes, though trying to stay focused, seemed far away. Something was wrong. You okay, Ramon? Keanu asked gently. Ramon nodded almost mechanically. Yes, sir, just a bit of a headache. Keanu paused for a beat, reading the man like a scene with no lines. There was no mistaking it. Pain was there behind the answer, a pain that wasn't physical. Are you sure? Yes, sir, it's just a tough day. Nothing important. Keanu tilted his head, slightly unconvinced. You've been driving me for how many years now? Almost 10. In those 10 years, have you ever once bothered me with anything personal? No, sir, Ramon replied. Then today, not the day to start thinking you would. The word hung in the air for a moment. Ramon said nothing. His hands loosened a little on the wheel. They stopped at a red light. Keanu took the chance to study his driver more closely. Ramon took a deep breath. I went to the bank this morning before picking you up. Okay, I've been saving for years for my wife's surgery. I took all the money in cash to withdraw it, and the teller wouldn't let. Mekanu's eyes narrowed slightly, concern blooming behind them. Wouldn't let you, he said. The amount was suspicious. Asked me to prove where it came from. Said I didn't look like someone who'd have that much money. A painful silence followed the words, stung even just in three. Telling. Did he actually say that? Keanu asked. Not exactly, but hadn't have to. It was all in his tone, his face, the way he held the envelope, like it didn't belong to me, like I didn't belong there. Ramon's voice cracked slightly. Keanu looked away, jaw tightening. Did you get the money? No. The word landed like a weight in the car. Keanu didn't speak right away. His fingers tapped lightly on his knee, acquiescent rhythm of building thoughts. Then he asked very calmly, what was the name of the teller? Ramon hesitated, unsure, but something in Keanu's voice said, you can't trust me, Mark. Keanu nodded slowly. Mark, he repeated, almost like appromise to himself. Then he sat back in his seat, slipping his sunglasses back on, but his expression had changed. Whatever came next, Mark would never forget it. Becca rolled forward again, and Keanu remained silent for the rest of the ride. But his mind wasn't still, and his next stop wouldn't be on the schedule. It would be the bank, the morning after the incident. Ramon pulled the car around like he always did, early, clean, spotless, but something was different. Hadn't know it yet, but the man he was about to pick up had made a decision, one that would shift the trajectory of the day, and perhaps even his life. As Keanu stepped into the back seat, he carried something different in his posture. Not tension exactly, but interpurpose. He greeted Ramon as usual, but his words were laced with thought. We're making a quick stop before the meeting, he said calmly. Ramon adjusted the mirror, glanced back. Where to, sir? The bank. Ramon stiffened slightly, unsure if he'd heard right. The same one. Keanu nodded once. Yes. The rest of the ride was quiet until Keanu leaned forward a little, breaking the stillness with a rare personal confession. You know, he began, when I was a kid, didn't have much. My mother worked 3 jobs. I used to count coins to help her pay rent. Ramon glanced in the mirror. Surprised, Keanu rarely spoke about his past. People would look at us like we were, less like we didn't belong in certain places, just because of how we looked or how we dressed. I was just a kid, but I remember how that felt. He paused for a moment, eyes on the passing streets. You saved my life. Once Ramon saw after my sister died. I wasn't talking to anyone. I was barely sleeping. You didn't say much. You just showed up. Every day opened. The door drove, waited quietly. Ramon didn't know how to respond. His hands tightened gently around the wheel. Sometimes the quiet people are the ones holding the world together, Keanu said softly. They arrived. The car stopped in front of the same glass doors that had closed on Ramon's dignity the day before. People walked in and out, oblivious, business as usual. Not today. Keanu stepped out of the car, and if everything shifted, the security guard at the front did a double take. A bank manager near the entrance gasped. Softly phones appeared. Almost instantly, Keanu Reeves had just walked into their bank. He walked calmly toward the service desk. Good morning, he said politely. I'd like to be assisted by Mark. There was a hush. The receptionist link. Unsure. Let me check. If please, I'll wait. Keanu replied. Mark appeared moments later, holding a clipboard, visibly unaware of who had just requested him. When he approached and saw the face, he froze. Mr. Reeves, what an honor, he stammered, offering a nervous smile. Keanu smiled politely. I'm here to make a deposit and ask a question. Mark's smile faltered the entire lobby. Simeto, lean in. Mark shifted uncomfortably, trying to maintain professionalism. Keanu lined, slightly closer voice, calm but steady as a blade would. You have treated a man in a suit the same way you treated the one who came in here yesterday with that envelope. Mark blinked, silent and in thought. Moment, every eye in the bank turned toward them. The question hovered in the air like a held breath. Would you have treated a man in a suit the same way you treated the one who came in here yesterday with that envelope? Mark opened his mouth, then closed it again. His face flushed. The clipboard in his hands trembled slightly, his knuckles white from gripping it too tightly. The bank lobby, now half filled with customers and employees, fell into a heavy silence. All eyes were on him. Keanu didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calm, composite presence demanded attention and respect. I've seen a lot of performances in my life, he continued, voice still level, but yesterday's wasn't one of them. That was real. He made a judgment based on nothing more than appearance. Mark tried to regain control of the moment. Mr. Reeves, I assure you, we have procedures. This isn't about procedures, Keanu interrupted. This is about dignity. Someone nearby pulled out a phone and began recording. Another followed within moments. The glowing red dots of several phone cameras dotted the edges of the room. Keanu didn't flinch. Let me tell you something. A booth man who stood at this counter yesterday. His name is Rayoni. He's been my driver for almost a decade. He shows up. He stays late. He treats every person with respect, whether they deserve it or not. A shift rippled through the crowd. Some looked down ashamed. Others simply stared. He's not just my employee, he's my friend, and what you did to him wasn't acceptable. Mark's mouth moved, trying to form a response, but the words wouldn't come. A woman behind the counter whispered to a colleague. The bank manager appeared, looking nervous, adjusting his tie and walking quickly toward the scene. Mr. Reeves, the manager, began, trying to smile. Perhaps we can step into my office. Keanu held up a hand, still calm, still firm. No. I asked to be helped by Mark, and I'd like to finish what I started here. With him there was no anger in his tone, just truth, cold, clear, inescapable. Mark looked around, fully aware now of the eyes on him. The camera's whispers, his shoulders slumped slightly. His practiced confidence had crumbled. That envelope, Keanu added, contained every dollar Ramon had saved for his wife's surgery, years of sacrifice. Do you know what it means for someone like him to walk into a place like this, trusting that they'll be treated fairly? More silence. Keanu leaned forward, just a little, locking eyes with Mark. Would you have questioned him if he wore a suit, if his skin was lighter, if he had a different last name? Mark said nothing. That silence, Keanu said, voice softening, just slightly, tell me everything. He took the envelope from his jacket and placed it gently on the counter. This is the deposit I came to make. Mark looked at it, then back at Keanu. But the real value here, Keanu added, isn't in the money. Keanu turned his head toward the entrance. Ramon stood there, having watched the entire exchange through the glass doors. Slowly Keanu reached out, picked up the envelope and walked toward him. He's my driver, Keanu said, his voice now rising just enough to echo through the room. But there's also my friend, and what happened here, that ends today. Mark's face went pale, and Ramon was about to find his voice. The question hovered in the air like a held breath. Would you have treated a man in a suit the same way you treated the one who came in here yesterday with that envelope? Mark opened his mouth, then closed it again. His face flushed the clipboard and his hands trembled slightly, his knuckles white from gripping it too tightly. The bank lobby, now half filled with customers and employees, fell into a heavy silence. Allies were on them. Keanu didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calm, composite presence demanded attention and respect. I've seen a lot of performances in my life, he continued, voice still level, but yesterday's wasn't one of them that was real. You made a judgment based on nothing more than appearance. Mark tried to regain control of the moment. Mr. Reeves, I assure you, we have procedures. This isn't about procedures, Keanu interrupted. This is about dignity. Someone nearby pulled out a phone and began recording another, followed within moments the glowing red dots of several phone cameras dotted the edges of the room. Keanu didn't flinch. Let me tell you something about the man who stood at this counter yesterday. His name is Ramon. He's been my driver for almost a decade. He shows up early, his late. He treats every person with respect, whether they deserve it or not. A shift rippled through the crowd. Some looked down ashamed, others simply starred. Not just my employee, he's my friend, and what you did to him was unacceptable. Mark's mouth moved, trying to form a response, but the words wouldn't. Kumea, woman behind the counter, whispered to a colleague. The bank manager appeared, looking nervous, adjusting his tie and walking quickly toward the scene. Mr. Reeves, the manager began, trying. Tasmal, perhaps we can step into my office. Keanu held up a hand, still calm, still firm. No, I asked to be helped by Mark, and I'd like to finish what has started here with him. There was no anger in his tone, just truth, cold, clear, inescapable. Mark looked around, fully aware now of the eyes on him. The camera's whispers, his shoulders slumped slightly. His practiced confidence had crumbled. That envelope, Keanu added, contained every dollar Ramon had saved for his wife's surgery, years of sacrifice. Do you know what it means for someone like him to walk into a place like this, trusting that they'll be treated fairly? More silence. Keanu leaned forward just a little, locking eyes with Mark. Would you have questioned him if he wore a suit, if his skin was lighter, if he had a different last name? Mark said nothing. That silence, Keanu said, voice softening just slightly, tells me everything. He took the envelope from his jacket and placed it gently on the counter. This is the deposit I came to make. Mark looked at it, then back at Keanu. But the real value here, Keanu added, isn't in the money. Keanu turned his head toward the entrance. Ramon stood there, having watched the entire exchange through the glass doors. Slowly, Keanu reached out, picked up the envelope, and walked toward him. He's my driver, Keanu said, his voice now rising just enough to echo through the room. But he's also my friend, and what happened here that ends today. Mark's face went pale, and Ramon was about to find his. Mark stood at the doorway, barely able to meet Raymond's eyes. In his hands, a simple white envelope. No bank logo, no branding, just handwriting on the front fur. Ramon hesitated behind him. The hallway buzzed faintly with the sound of a cooking TV show. Louisa was resting in the next room. The scent of tea and warm bread hung in the air. He stepped forward, arms crossed, not defensive but uncertain. What are you doing here? He asked, not harshly, just honestly. Mark swallowed. I came to say something I should have said the moment I looked you in the eyes, young and failed to see you. He extended the envelope with both hands. Roman didn't take it yet. What is this? Just my words. I couldn't say them right in the moment. I wasn't raised to know how, but I wrote them down. Ramon slowly took the envelope and opened it. Inside, a letter written in careful, neat penmanship. He read the first few insolently as Mark waited, his hands twisting nervously. Ramon, I humiliate her, and I've thought about it every day. Since my father was a chauffeur, he did before I ever got the chance to understand who he really was. I think I hated that he was just a driver until I saw you and realized I'd become the kind of man who would have humiliated him too. Ramon stopped reading, his eyes burned. Mark took a step back. When I saw third video online, I didn't feel attacked, I felt exposed. Ramon looked at him for a long moment. You think saying sorry fixes it? Mark shook his head. No, I don't think anything I do will erase it, but I needed you to see me try. For a moment there, wizenly silence between them. Then Ramon stepped back and opened the door wider. Come in. Mark blinked, surprised. Are you sure you didn't see me before? Maybe it's time I see you now. They sat at the small kitchen table. Ramon poured 2 cups of tea, and for the first time he told his full story. He spoke of his childhood in a quiet village in Mexico, of crossing borders, not for dreams of riches, but for survival, of meeting Luisa, falling in love, and raising a daughter with nothing but patience and shared sacrifice. He told Mark about the nights he'd slept in the car so Luisa could have the bed when her body ached, about missing birthdays, about learning English, be listening to the radio as he drove wealthy strangers across the city, about the shame of always being invisible, and the miracle of becoming Keanu's driver, not because of fame, but because for on Sasomione saw him. Mark listened, really listened. He didn't interrupt when Ramon finished. The silence was sacred. I judged you, Mark said quietly, because I never made peace with my own father, because I never let myself believe men like him, like you, could be anything other than shadows. In Samian Else's story, Ramon looked at him, really looked, and something in his softened. Do better, that's all I ask. Mark nodded, eyes shining. I will. The next day Bank posted a statement, not about PR, not about policies, but about change. The launch of a new program, Empathy in Practice, a required training course for all employees, developed in collaboration with year community leaders, and real stories. Ramon's was the first stone included. He never asked for that, but when they offered, he said only if he helped someone else be seen using it. The video continued to spread, but Keanu still refused interviews. All he said was, "This isn't a movie, it's someone's life that deserves more than headlines." Months passed, and then came the day of Ramon's daughter's nursing school graduation. Ramon sat in the front row with Luisa, both dressed modestly but proudly. Their daughter walked the stage, diploma in hand, eyes searching the crowd. She found them, and just behind them, in the very last row, barely visible, behind sunglasses and a baseball cap, Keanu nodded. She smiled. He slipped out, quite le bête. The applause even stopped outside the venue, under the shade of a tree. Keanu waited for Ramanthe, embraced briefly without words, but before he left, Keanu leaned in and whispered, "Sometimes silent kindness changes more in this world than any scene I'll ever shoot." The days that followed the graduation passed in a gentle rhythm. Life after the storm had found its stillness again. Ramon returned to work. Luisa's recovery moved steadily forward. Their daughter, now a licensed nurse, began her first shifts in the unit of a public hospital, carrying with her the strength of a quiet father who had never stopped believing in her. And then one afternoon, another letter arrived. No stamp, no envelope, just a folded sheet of paper, slid quietly under Ramon's apartment. He opened it with curiosity and found the same handwriting from months earlier. Been going to therapy for the first time in my life, not to erase what I did, but to understand it. My father died driving someone to the airport. He'd worked 16 hours straight. I resented him for always being gone, but now I see the sacrifice you reminded me of him that terrified me. Thank you for forgiving me when I didn't deserve. I too changed something in me, not just how I see others, but how I see myself. Mark. Ramon folded the letter carefully and placed it in the small drawer where he kept other precious things, old photos, his daughter's first crayon drawings, and a tiny note Luisa had written him once that simply read, "Thank you for never giving up." Honest, he didn't need more than that. Weeks later, the bank's empathy training program held its first graduation. Employees sat in rows off holding chairs in the break room, watching video clips, listening to personal stories, hearing uncomfortably traits. The last speaker of the day was a man in a pressed white shirt and black slacks. Raymond. He didn't speak as an activist. He wasn't dramatic. He simply told the truth, and for the first time, Mark stood in the audience, not ashamed, but proud. Not proud of what he'd done, but proud that he had changed. Life didn't become perfect. Beauty became more human. Ramon continued working for Keanu, who remained as discreet as ever. But something had shifted between them, something unspoken, the kind of bond that require words to exist, a bond forged not in the back seat of a luxury car, but in shared silence, seen pain and deep respect. On a quiet Sunday, Ramon and his daughter sat on a bench near the hospital where she now worked. "Do you ever wish things had happened differently?" she asked. He thought. For a moment, no. He said, because sometimes it takes being broken in front of people to show them what was always whole inside you. She smiled, rested her head on his shoulder. Just then, a familiar figure passed by on the other side of the street. Keanu, hoodie up, hands in his pockets, walking quietly alone. As always, Ramon raised a hand. Keanu lifted his chin in greeting and then kept walking back. Just before he turned the corner, he paused, turned slightly, and called out softly sometimes. A quiet kindness does more than the loudest action. Ramon nodded. They didn't need to say anything else because now the world was a little different, a little kinder, and for once Ramon wasn't invisible.